Right, guys, I have a new tent to review, which is the Station13 Shield. Now, I'd never heard of these tents, and I'd never heard of the manufacturer. It's a British company, and it's a family-owned business. Predominantly, they have been long-distance walkers, cyclists, and they decided to set a business up where they had tents manufactured for them to their specification, and in some cases to their own design, but certainly to a design that is spec'd for them. And the spec on paper is very, very good for these tents. I'll go into that in a moment when we have a look at it in closer detail. Now, I actually did a review of this 2 weeks ago when I was on a camping trip, and unfortunately I had a problem with the microphone and I lost all my audio. So I had to bin everything. Now, that was my first use of it, and I had a couple of nights a couple of weeks ago, which went very well. There were some initial things on the tent that I wasn't so sure about from a slight design issue, but very, very minor. And I'll show you that once I've got to looking at the spec. However, in that couple of weeks, I've resolved the problem. So it's not a problem. So the company's based in Warwickshire. They're selling these tents from their website, which is Station13. I'll put the details on the information section. And they have a eBay shop as well, so you can find them on eBay. I think I paid about 125 or 6 for this tent. And it's a one-person, 3 to 4 season tent. Having used it that 2 nights, and I've used it another night last night, this is good enough for 4 season. Not so sure about the fell tops, but certainly from a point of view of winter camping, this is a very, very nice warm tent. Well, we'll have a look. So, guys, that's what it comes in. And it's the same material as the tent. I'm just going to get it out. Obviously, I've used it. So I've attached the guy lines, which came unattached. And also I've put the inner to the fly, because it's a fly pitch first. Or at least you can combine the pitch, fly and inner together. So it is as it is because I've used it. So you've got a nice little grab handle on the back to pull your tent out. Comes with a repair patch. It has a tie that goes around the tent. And then this is our actual tent in all its glory. So guys, what we've got is a pack weight of 1.66 kilogram. The bag itself is 45 by 14 centimeters. But to be fair, that could be compressed down with a compression sack, which is what I use for a lot of my tents. However, standard size in that bag, 45 by 14 centimeters. It's a outer and inner pitch together. So in particularly bad wet weather, you're just pitching the whole thing up in one go. They talk in terms of it taking about 3 minutes to pitch, initial pitch. Now, when I say initial pitch, there are more guy lines that you can put out, but don't necessarily need to if the weather is nice, still and calm. Now, last night with this tent, it was very blustery where I was, so I had to guy out all the guy lines. Tonight, it's very calm, and I'll just do the absolute necessary. In total, there's 8 guy line points. So there's plenty of guy lines there to batten the thing down. And last night it was blustery, so I did really need to. And having used it for, I guess now 3 nights of use over 2 separate occasions, it's actually, I think, performing very well. So anyway, get back to what you get for your kit. These are the aluminium poles, and they are anodized 7001 T6 poles. They're actually pre-shaped, if you can see. And there are 2 lengths. There's a long one, and then there's a shorter one. And you can see the curvature on that. The shock cord in the poles is decent quality as well. It's 8.5mm shock cord, and everything just sort of clicks together quite nicely, to be honest. It has a good feel to it. You get 16, yes, 1/6 aluminium pegs. And these are like V-shaped aluminium pegs. So you get 16 of those. And again, they're not really heavy duty, but they're sufficient for most sort of camping. Although I suspect, not suspect, I would use heavier duty in winter where the weather is not as good as it is this time of year. So this is the fly sheet that you can see. And with the fly sheet, it's UV protected. It's 210T ripstop PU polyester. It has a really good quality feel to it. The hydrostatic head is 6,500 on this fly sheet. You can actually pay a little bit extra and get the hydrostatic head material to 10,000, which is superb. It does add a little bit of weight. I think it takes up to just over the 2 kilogram weight, because obviously it's a thicker, denser material. But I chose to go for the 6,500 hydrostatic head because I think that's sufficient for what I'm doing. The inner, and now the inner's already attached now, so we're just going to have to look at it initially just here. So the inner is a breathable full polyester, and it's a breathable full polyester that is throughout the inner tent, except for one fairly small no-seam mesh triangle shape, which is opposite a vent on the outside of the tent. So when they talk of 3 to 4 season, I genuinely, for my type of camping, winter camping, this would be sufficient for season. It's proven to be quite warm in the time that I've been using it. The actual floor is bathtub, and then there's a floor to the inner, which is just there. And that's the same material as the fly sheet at 6,500 hydrostatic head. The guy lines are just standard guy lines, but they actually do feel quite grippy, so that's good. And, they're actually decent quality. I thought they might be better in a foresty green colour, but actually, to be honest, they're all right for what they are. And they can be swapped out. The tent's well sealed with seam welding. And the usual place with cheaper tents that are a problem is where you have toggles or anything else that's been stitched onto the actual fly sheet. Now, this one has been out in some heavy rain already and hasn't suffered from any rain ingress. But you know, when I look at this here, I can see that probably needs to be sealed, and it's a very easy job to do. But it's quite common with these type of tents where everything gets sealed well, and they just tend to miss a little bit like that there. Just in there, if you can see it. But I can seal that in about 30 seconds. Right, guys, I'm going to get this tent racked up as quick as I can. I've just got a tiny little bit of rain. The sun's still trying to shine. So that's your big pole for one end. That's your smaller pole for the other end. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to just loosely peg out the corners. We've got a little bit of a sun shower going on here. So the pole actually goes through a sleeve which is on the fly sheet, and it's a low profile sleeve which supposedly allows for less wind issues. And all you do is just push it through anyway, either side, and there it pops out. And then once you've got it through, sort of evenly done, you can see the shape starting to take, because I've the smaller end I've actually fixed into position first, and then there's little ringlets on the tabs that come out from each corner. You need to sort of put it up first loosely, and then tie it down properly. So it might take a little bit of adjustment if you don't quite get it right the first time. So that's effectively the tent up, and actually has rigidity just with the two guy lines to hold the back out, the four corners pegged out, and then on the taller end of the tent there are another three pegs to actually pull this into a nice tight shape. But I'm going to put the two rear guy lines out. There's the wind starting to get up a little bit now. And then it's just a case of going around and just, if you need to, readjusting the pegs that are in the corners, the 3 at the rear, and at the front of the tent, smaller end. This is your vent from the rear of the tent, the big end, and that has a little bit of Velcro and a piece of, I would say, plastic tubing inside that material. So you can have it shut down, or as you really should do, is have it open to give it some venting. So the rain's coming on a bit heavier now, so I'm going to show you a little bit inside, a quick look around and a little bit inside. So at the bottom there, you can see the 3 aluminium pegs at the rear of the tent, the high end. You got one just here, in the middle, and at the right-hand side. Now, if you notice, the reason why I think this is a 4-season tent, the actual fly comes all the way to the ground. So there ain't going to be much wind getting through there. Comes in this nice olive green. It has one door on the one side. And here at the back, you can see the other vent. And this little bit of material comes out on these guy lines to hold the thing out. Now, you can have that closed down. So you could actually have that closed down and use these guy lines here to tension the tent out. And just to show you a quick look under there, and that's the mesh panel. And it's no-seam mesh, so it's actually good quality mesh, proper no-seam mesh. So that's at your foot end. So you can see the door outlined by that red stripe, and it opens up for the entire body length. But I'm going to get in now because it's just raining a little bit. So it has a cover, not elasticated, but it holds its place with a bit of Velcro at the bottom, and that holds that in place to cover the zip. The zip is not a brand, there's no branding on it, so I've no idea what the zips are. But that zip goes all the way to the top, and then this door opens up completely, as does the inner door, to allow access, easy access. So that's the actual outer door, tied up. It has one loop. It's a toggle. And that just holds that in place whilst you access the inner tent. Now the zips for this open up fully as well. So if we take it right to the top, and it goes right to the bottom, and then this rolls up with 2 toggles. And now we'll have a little look inside just to show you the space. Oh, the other thing that is really useful is you have a little loop here. Just pull that out and it gives you a floor for the actual vestibule. It's only a small vestibule, but actually you can get a lot in it, especially in the higher end. So just to show you the vestibule at the higher end, the bigger end, it's quite a decent size. I can get my motorbike boots, I can get a couple of bags in there, the crash bar bags, and other bits and pieces. Shoes, flip-flops, cooking gear. So I can get quite a lot in there. The vestibule at the other end narrows down to nothing. Well, you can still get odds and ends in there. But I tend to keep everything in that side. Actually, I mentioned the mesh on the inner tent. So that's the only mesh we've got on the inner tent. And it corresponds to where the vent is on the right hand side here. So inside the tent, dimensions will be up on the information section. But it's quite, for a one person tent, it's quite a decent size. You can see the width there. And basically that'll get a single mat and you'll have room either side. And I've found with my mat, I've got about, I would say, 10 to 12 inches above my head at the head end, with the mat down towards the bottom and the lower end. There's also a single pocket which is stitched into the side there. It's okay. Actually, when you put your things in it, it sort of sits quite nicely. But I would have liked more mesh pockets in possibly slightly different positions. But it is what it is. Now, there's a couple of things that irritated me a little bit when I first used this tent. And one of them was the toggle here. So this is the toggle, and there's two of them, one down there and this one here. And the actual length of the material, both there and on the inside, was quite long. The one on the inside meant that when you toggled it, this material hung down to about there. It was just a bit of a mess. It just wasn't tight enough. So having used it after the first time, all I did was tie a knot to shorten that loop. And that's worked effectively. And it doesn't irritate me now. When I first put it up, this is at the lower end, but it was the same at the higher end. This material here was hanging down. It was baggy. Now, I haven't tensioned the whole thing out properly because I've just got it up. But that was hanging down and it was really irritating. I'm looking now at the toggle that holds the top inner in the middle. And all I did was put this toggle, I hope you can see this toggle through twice. And that had the effect of, exaggeratingly, pulling it up like that. And at the bottom, where you can see, hopefully, three toggles, one either side and one in the middle, I just did the same with that. And that had the effect of lifting this up. And it's worked. So guys, this is the Station13 Shield 6,500 millimeter hydrostatic head tent. Remember, you can get it with a 10,000 millimeter hydrostatic head. You can also buy a footprint which fits the inner tent. I chose not to have the footprint because I've got other tarps that I can use. Although if I were to keep this tent, then I might get the footprint. Now this is the first impression and first pitch for you, but obviously I've done it 2 or 3 times now. And apart from my initial irritation with the baggy material, and it's just down to the length of the loops, having fixed that, costing nothing, very easily done, I like this tent. I do like it. I wasn't so sure, to be honest with you, whether after the first night, whether I gelled with the tent. And that seems a funny thing to say, but I have all sorts of different tents, and all the ones I've currently got and the ones that you've seen in reviews, I've gelled with. Even the one that went back because of a slight issue with it, I bonded with that tent. And that was the Fawcett 2-person dome tent. And now into about having used it over, around about 3 or 4 nights over 2 separate occasions in different weather conditions. I'm gelling with this tent. I do actually like it. It takes me longer than 3 minutes to put up. But I guess, pitching this day after day after day, you'd have it down to 3-4 minutes to pitch. Effectively, you've seen what needed doing, and it took on its structural form very quickly. And then it's just a case of tweaking it here and there. So what do I like about this tent? Well, I like it. It's a British company. It's a family-owned business. They're long-distance walkers, cyclists, outdoor people. They have this tent made for them, but to their specification, based on their experience and what they have needed over the years. The quality of the fly and the inner is very good. The zips, although they're not branded, the zips seem fine. They seem to work perfectly well. The zips come with toggles, which help to pull up and down. These type of tents in bad weather, obviously, they're not brilliant for in and out because you're having to open it to get in. But with these type of tents, you can use a tarp over the top just to give you a bit more shelter. And actually, I've adapted this without having to actually do any adaptation, but I have set this up so that I can have a little bit of shelter if it's raining. And I've used that a couple of times now, a little adaptation. I'll show you it, but I've used that adaptation a couple of times. And even in some gusty winds, it was absolutely fine. So I guess I really need to show you that, and then we'll call it a day on this until I've done longer review on it. And I've had it out in rain, some heavy rain, but not for long periods. So I do need to do a test in pretty abysmal, poor rain conditions, and I will do that. But so far, so good. Let me show you now what I've done to make it a bit more usable for in and out if the weather is really wet. All you need is some extra aluminium poles, and this is off an OEX tarp, which I've still got. And I just used 2 of those poles. One for the top, and that slid in there to stand like that. One tent peg, and some guy line, which you can buy from anywhere. I've got a couple of reels of it, so I have this ready to do this sort of thing. So there's a loop on there. So, struck me that with this pole, through that loop on the fly sheet there, the guy line tightened up on the pole, and that pegged out. And then just tensioned up enough, not too tight, but just enough. That gives me a shelter when it's raining. Now, if it's driving rain and it's coming from the other direction, it's going to get in. But on the 2 occasions I've used this with rain, it has worked absolutely tremendous. And as you can see with the slope, it just naturally runs down and off. And that just means, as long as there's no real high winds, like now there's no wind at all, but it's gonna rain again at some stage. You can leave that in place to access an egress without water getting into the tent too much. And it gives you an area just to brew your coffee, make a meal. Obviously at the outer edge. And these poles, you can buy poles like this from anywhere and make your own skyline. So that has instantly made the tent very, very usable. And for a one-person big side door, gives you a little bit of weatherproofing if the weather conditions aren't very good. Clearly, if the weather's really bad, you can throw a tarp over the whole thing. But just for that time when it's on and off with the rain, light rain, that's a brilliant little way of improving on the usability of this tent. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe or give me a thumbs up. It's always good to get some feedback as well. I really enjoy comments and responding, and I respond to everything. So, just to finish off, that's the Station 13 Shield.